All right, y'all, bear with me on this one. We got a lot of twists and turns in this story that I have to walk you through. So, as you all know, Trump is faced with the very difficult challenge of coming up with $464 million because of his fraud in New York. Now, he tried to get a bond from 30 different companies. They said, nah, man, that's the biggest bond of all time. We're not going to do that. And so now he's kind of put in a corner where it looks like the most likely path forward is they have to seize some of his assets. That would mean that all these very famous, New York Trump properties or Trump properties elsewhere, they would no longer be Trump properties. It'd be highly embarrassing for him, and would be a massive, massive financial blow. Now, having said that, this guy's a former president. He's a billionaire. Probably's got 500 tricks up his sleeve because of the connections that he has. And lo and behold, we get this. Trump media merger approved, paving way for deal that could make him billions. All right, so there's an asterisk in this conversation that you're going to see in just a second. He can come up with the cash because of this, but he can't access it right away. So look at this. Shareholders of Digital World Acquisition Corporation approved a merger with Donald Trump's media company on Friday, days before the former president is facing a deadline to pay $464 million bond based on a New York civil fraud judgment he is appealing. Trump Media and Technology Group will now trade on the stock market under DJT. The New York Times reported that the deal will put $300 million into Trump's media company, giving a cash infusion to keep Truth Social running. The merger also means that the stock market price for Trump's media company will reportedly be $5 billion, giving Trump a personal stake of $3 billion. Now, let me pause to point out the economy is fake. Like everything is fake. Because ain't no way it's worth $5 billion. Not possible. The user base of Truth Social has collapsed. I don't know where they come up with these numbers. By this logic, Secular Talk is worth 500 million, right? Like, what are we talking about here? This is a failure of a social media company, but now worth 5 billion? My ass cheeks. Unbelievable. How they come up with this, I don't know. That wealth on paper may not help the former president in covering the bond, though, as he can't sell any of his shares for the next 6 months. So in other words, this is giving him the cash he needs, but he can't access it right away. Wow. The Times first reported the merger based on Digital World's stock price of $44 a share just before the vote announcement. Trump Media will debut with a market value of more than $5 billion. That means Mr. Trump's personal stake will be worth more than $3 billion. Shares of Trump Media could begin trading under the new stock symbol as soon as next week. The deal's approval comes as Mr. Trump is facing a Monday deadline to cover the $454 million penalty in a civil fraud case in New York, blah, blah, blah. You guys know the gist of it. This isn't as straightforward as you make the deal, you have the money, you pay it off, because, again, the timeline doesn't add up. He can't access that for the next 6 months. Also, to sell that that huge amount of the shares would sort of spook the market and make the company worth way less anyway. It is possible he could borrow against it in the short term, but I'm going to throw a twist to you in a second in this story, which complicates it even further, okay? So this looks like his lifeline and his way out to pay the fine, but we also get this. Citizens for Ethics says, breaking, the biggest institutional investor in the SPAC that's merging with Truth Social is Susquehanna International Group, LLP, which was co-founded by GOP megadonor Jeffrey Yass. The deal is poised to give Donald Trump a massive financial lifeline. So in other words, the theory here is Jeffrey Yass is effectively buying off Trump, paying off the fine for access, direct line to the president if he becomes president again. And this guy basically is going to be Trump's boss, Trump's daddy, right? If you're bailing him out in this scenario that he's in. Pennsylvania's richest person, Jeff Yass, is buying Truth Social for $3 billion so Trump can pay off the $450 million judgment in return for Trump doing a 180 on his TikTok and China stance to preserve Yass's $30 billion with a B stake in TikTok. We call this oligarchy when it's elsewhere. Remember how Trump came out the other day, flipped his position, was basically like, I'm against the banning of TikTok. He used to be in favor of banning TikTok, flipped his position. Well, this guy who's giving him a financial lifeline is a big investor in TikTok. So now I'll go a step further than this guy. If this guy functionally does bail out Trump, then he's going to get more than just Trump's vote on the TikTok thing. He can get whatever the hell he wants. because Trump's ass is in a bind, and he's coming in and saving him here. Again, it's a little complicated, the specifics, because he's not like he's saving him immediately up front, but knowing that this money's coming, he could borrow against it. But it looks like there's some sort of corrupt deal going on in order to get Trump the money he needs. Now, finally, I'll give you this. This happened right before I was going to report this story. Trump New York fraud bond cut to $175 million in appeal from $454 million. Let's read some of this. A New York appeals court on Monday paused for 10 days a massive civil fraud judgment against the former president Donald Trump and sharply reduced the bond he would have to post to obtain a longer stay to $175 million. Trump's lawyer, in a court filing last week, said that it was impossible for him to get an appeal bond of $454 million to satisfy the judgment in that amount, having approached more than 30 surety companies without success. None of those companies were willing to write a bond without Trump posting cash or some other liquid asset. The attorneys wrote in their filing with the Manhattan Supreme Court Appellate Division panel. Because of the size of the fraud judgment, the companies insisted that Trump show cash reserves approaching $1 billion, according to his lawyers, but neither Trump nor the Trump Organization company has that amount of cash on hand. The fraud judgment stems from a lawsuit, blah, blah, blah. You guys know the gist of it. So the reality is this. Trump is able to secure a $100 million bond. That was the number that came up the last time. They weren't going to do $464 million or $454 million, whatever the exact number is. They weren't going to do it. They were going to do $100 million. So now the appeals court steps in and says, we're cutting the bond to $175 million. So it looks like now he can get the $100 million bond and then put up to $75 million. But again, then the question comes up, does he even have the $75 million to put up? And on that, I don't know, man. That's 50-50 if he even has the $75 million. So we come full circle back to the initial point of this segment, which is there's some financial shenanigans going on with basically billionaire sugar daddies who are going to save his ass in return for his favors if/when he's president again. That's what we're looking at. So the final point is, look, I honestly think it's inescapable that Trump genuinely proposes a national security threat if he's back in the White House. Because he's got all these fines. He's in the hole a tremendous amount of money. And how do we know if a billionaire is going to come save his ass in return for favors? How do we know it's not going to be some other foreign government? We already know Saudi Arabia gave Jared Kushner $2 billion, gave Trump at least tens of millions of dollars for the live golf events at his courses. How do we know China or Russia, or we know there was there was an article in the New York Times, but I think it was Oman paying off Trump. Basically, it's open season that this guy's in so much debt and owes so much money because of his crimes that any billionaire, any foreign government can step in, fund his ass, knowing, hey, if I save him here, I basically am the U.S. president if he gets back in there. So I think that's a sincere national security threat. I really do. And so he got saved in a couple different ways here by the bond being lowered, but also by the billionaire bailing him out. But it's still an open question. If he can find that $75 million, we still might have a potential scenario where at least one of his properties are seized if he can't make that $75 billion. But it looks like they're going to find a way where now he could borrow against the shares of Truth Social, where he'll probably be able to pay it without the stuff being seized. But man, it's like some Looney Tunes ass shit. The way that he's like wiggling out at the last moment, but not even really wiggling out. Now he's just like a wholly owned subsidiary of any asshole billionaire who wants to fund him or any foreign government. Really, really ugly stuff, man. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.